All right, so next what we're going to talk about is one of the limitations of pre-operational thought, and that is called egocentrism. So let's take a look here. Okay, so there are several limitations to pre-operational thought. And the one we're going to discuss at this time is called egocentrism. In fact, Piaget believed this is even present in infancy, going back that time as well. But in a nutshell, egocentrism is the inability to take another's viewpoint. In other words, what that basically means is that it's hard for young children to assume the role of another person, okay? In other words, it's sort of hard to distinguish themselves from the world. And so we often see this in young children where they may do something to someone else, but not understand that that person has feelings and that they were hurt by your actions and that kind of thing. So in other words, egocentrism means kind of like they're in their own little world and it's hard for them to take the perspectives of others or the roles of others. So I'm going to give you an example of this. Actually, I'm going to give you a couple. So this is the very famous mountain experiment conducted by Piaget. So here we have this table with these three mountains. Okay, so notice there's a large, medium, and small here. In some cases, you would even place objects on top of the mountains to distinguish them. And then Piaget would ask the child to sit over here in this chair. So let's say little Johnny came in. Okay, Johnny, come on in, sit in this chair. And across from the table in this chair would be a doll that was clearly visible to the child. So remember, Piaget is trying to demonstrate the sort of concept of egocentrism in young children. So he would say something like, okay, Johnny, I want you to look at the mountains here in front of you. From your perspective, which mountain is the closest to you? And of course, the child would correctly say, in most cases, the largest mountain, as it is closest to them. The next step, Piaget would say something like, okay, Johnny, I want you to imagine that you're the doll. So you're sitting here, you're looking at the world through the doll's eyes, saying it at their level, basically. So from the doll's perspective, which mountain is closest to you? And so Piaget found, in most cases, children of this age, early childhood, would say the largest mountain. So do you guys see what's happening here? Theoretically, if egocentrism is in play and it is existing in this particular child, it's hard for Johnny to take the complete perspective of the doll and only gives his own. So in other words, it's hard for him to imagine he is the doll and looking through the doll's eyes, he can only give his own perspective, in this case, the largest mountain. So of course, the correct answer would be the smallest one if you were looking through the doll's eyes, but the child is having difficulty with that due to egocentrism issues and says the largest mountain. Here's another example. It's the very famous candy bar example. I'm just going to read this one. So it goes something like this. Once there was a little boy who liked candy. One day he put a chocolate bar in a box on the table and went away. While he was gone, his mother came home. She took the candy out of the box and put it in the top drawer of his dresser. The little boy then came back home. He was very hungry and he went to get his candy. Where would he look first? Okay, so of course, as adults, we know that of course he would look on the table because that's where he last left the candy bar. He does not know it had been moved, but when we ask a 3-year-old this particular question, they will say the top drawer of the dresser. In other words, they go to where the candy had been moved, not understanding that the boy would have no knowledge that it had been moved because he was not there. So hopefully you guys understand that. So when we ask an older child that question, let's say they're 5 or 6 towards the end of this stage, then they would correctly say on top of the table because that's basically where he left it. That is showing egocentrism because it's hard for the child that we're asking these questions to imagine they're the boy in the story and to kind of look at it from their perspective. In other words, the boy in the story would not know the candy had been moved because he was not there. So therefore, egocentrism would be in play because they go right to the answer if it's in the drawer because, as we told them in the story that it had been moved. So hopefully that makes sense. But theoretically, that sort of demonstrates these sort of feelings of egocentrism in young children. All right, so we are going to go ahead and stop the lecture there. Hope you enjoyed that. So please move on to the next step in the class.